Hello, this is Coding Gicha for full-stack developers. In the previous video, I covered how to connect to MariaDB from PHP in Query SQL using PDO MySQL. By utilizing PDO for connecting from PHP to MariaDB, you can maintain a consistent approach across various DBMSs, not just MariaDB. Once you connect to the database using the PDO DSN, you can then use the same API across different DBMSs. The constructor of a PDO object requires DSN, username, and password information. However, creating database connection objects by directly passing this information in every file containing database-related tasks makes maintenance difficult. I will move this functionality to a class file and implement it so that each file creates the database connection object from that class file. To illustrate how database connection objects are created from a class file and used across multiple files, I will rename the file displaying the BOM hierarchy to detail.php under the BOM directory. I will create the database connection object class file in the conference directory. Later, I will block external access to the conference directory. I will declare namespaces to prevent class name conflicts. I will write a class. I will write a function that creates a PDO object to connect to the database. Namespaces have the advantage of grouping code and preventing conflicts, but all class objects are recognized as existing under the namespace in which they are declared. To access classes or functions in the global namespace from within a namespaced file, you can use a / prefix. I will load the PHP file I wrote. I will create a Gicha configuration object. I will create a database connection PDO object from the Gicha configuration object. The source code has become cleaner, and there is the advantage of managing common source code in an integrated class. I will separate the DSN information used in the parameters of the PDO object constructor from the source code and manage it in a configuration file. PHP provides a method to define and use DSNs in a php.ini file. When opening a file with Vim, using the plus option allows you to open the file while moving the cursor to the last line. I will write the DSN configuration information under the PDO section. The structure is to set DSN information for keys starting with the prefix pdo.dsn. In this case, the name following the pdo.dsn prefix becomes the DSN name to be used in the PHP code. You can configure multiple DSNs by setting different DSN names. I will restart PHP fpm to apply the DSN name configured in the php.ini. Now, you can use DSN configuration information simply by using the DSN name. The database connection PDO object requires not only DSN information but also a username and password. The php.ini file does not provide a method to manage the PDO username and password. Although there is a way to manage the username and password through custom variables in the php.ini file, it is preferred to use a dedicated ini file for the application because the php.ini file becomes heavily coupled with the web application. I will create an ini configuration file for the web application under the conference directory. Instead of managing only DSN information separately in a php.ini file, I will manage everything together in the web application's ini configuration file. Since a single web application typically uses only one database schema, I did not consider multiple database schemas. However, depending on the environment, you may need to use prefixes to distinguish between database schemas. In PHP, configurations in an ini file can be grouped into sections. Since the web application's ini configuration file can include various additional settings besides database connection information, I will group them into a PDO section. I will declare a static variable to store the PDO configuration information. When the class object is created, I will retrieve the PDO configuration information from the web application's ini configuration file. The parseIni file function can be used to retrieve the information from the ini file as an associative array. If the second parameter is set to true, the information can be retrieved grouped into sections. Not only the DSN, but also the username and password are now managed via an ini configuration file. I will now modify a PHP file to retrieve the BOM list. Thanks to the class file, I can create database connection PDO objects using a common method even in the PHP code for retrieving the BOM list. Since this screen is for viewing the entire BOM list, search conditions and named parameters are not needed, so I will use a query function instead of a prepare function. Up until 7 Philippine pesos and 20 centavos, the closing mark of a here doc or now doc had to start in the first column without white spaces, which caused a problem where multi-line strings would always overflow out of alignment. However, starting with 7 Philippine pesos and 30 centavos, this was improved to allow multi-line strings to be indented according to the column indented by the closing mark. Since the SQL query in the PDO statement does not have a named parameter, the execute function does not require any parameters either. Since I need to retrieve the BOM list, I will use --fetch all --. I will retrieve it as an array containing associative arrays. While it is recommended to separate the PHP implementation code and the HTML output screen using the MVC pattern, I will write everything in a single file here due to time constraints. I will output the BOM list using a for each loop. For each row in the list, I will set the BOM ID to the ID attribute. I will output the BOM name and issue date. Separating the PHP implementation code and the HTML output screen using the MVC pattern was omitted due to time constraints, as it requires the use of additional frameworks or complex configurations. However, separating style sheets in JavaScript from the HTML can be easily done using HTML tags. In the previous video, style sheets were not separated from the HTML either, resulting in poor readability and a very cluttered appearance. Using styles inline within HTML limits the functionality available. If you load JavaScript using the traditional method of !classic script !, the script cannot be used because the DOM object has not yet been created if the JavaScript is declared first. You must check if the DOM object is in a ready state. Since !classic script ! was designed to pre-configure JavaScript functions for inline use within HTML, its use is restricted or requires additional implementations to work around the current modern approach. You also cannot import other JavaScript files from within JavaScript. You must declare all necessary script files in advance using the HTML script tag. Since all scripts are called globally, there is also the issue of variables or functions with the same name being overridden. It is recommended to load it as a modern module. I will create the style.css file. Since serif fonts are preferred in print materials in English-speaking cultures, the default document font in web browsers is serif. However, depending on the language, the default document font may be sans serif, and since sans serif is more preferred in digital documents, I will set the web application font to sans serif. I will set the border style for the table that displays the BOM list. I will set a background color to distinguish the BOM row where the mouse is over. I will create the script.js file. I will query the BOM rows using query selector all . I will implement a feature where clicking a BOM row navigates to a screen displaying the hierarchy of that BOM. I will add 2 buttons to the screen displaying the BOM hierarchy. I will wrap the area containing these buttons with a div tag to group them with the BOM hierarchy area. I will add a button to return to the BOM list and a button to remove the corresponding BOM. iTools do not properly display indentation for HTML tags used in PHP files, nor do they provide proper auto-completion. For various reasons, it is recommended to separate the PHP implementation code from the HTML output screen to align with the MVC pattern. The layout is messy because the styles are written inline. I will move the styles to a CSS file. I will also handle the process of returning to the BOM list using JavaScript. I will create a detail.css file. I will set the font family to sans serif. I will set the width of the div tag wrapping the BOM hierarchy area and the button area to fit content. I will write the styles that were previously set inline. I will set the styles for the button areas. I will create the detail.js file. I will find the button to return to the BOM list. I will implement the functionality to return to the BOM list when the list button is clicked. In actual development, I use the MVC pattern and avoid exposing PHP extensions externally, so I did not set index.php as the index. Therefore, I must set the full file address. I will implement the remove button next time while explaining transactions. Let's check what has been implemented so far in a web browser. Although I changed bom.php to bom/detail.php, it is still being displayed due to the cache. However, if I refresh the page, it will display a 404 not found error. I will access bom/index.php. Two BOM lists are displayed. If you click skateboard, a screen showing the BOM hierarchy of the skateboard is displayed. Clicking the list button returns to the BOM list screen. Clicking on ladder back chair displays a screen showing the BOM hierarchy of the ladder back chair. I will click the list button to return to the BOM list screen. Configuration files for the web application are managed in the conference directory, but these files are currently exposed externally. There is a problem where any files containing sensitive information are also downloaded as is. I will prevent the conference directory from being exposed externally. I will open the Nginx site configuration file. I will deny access to the conference directory for the development site of www.gicha.org. I will reload Nginx to apply the settings. Apache also has a similar setting to deny access to the conference directory. You must restart Apache after configuring it. I will access the address conference/gicha.ini again. It is not downloading now, and a 403 forbidden message is displayed. Seeing a 403 forbidden message is essentially an admission that the file actually exists. It is a good idea to set it to display a 404 not found message instead, leaving no room for illegal attempts to download the file. Thank you for watching.